Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist.
1 minute apologist. 1 minute of apologetics, 2 minutes of bullshit.
We interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to curious questions.
Ted, do we have any extra biblical evidence for the Exodus?
Yes, Bobby, we do. And it's actually found in the text itself.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Just like the New Testament, obviously if the New Testament writers are eyewitnesses of the resurrection,
For the sake of brevity, I'm going to let that slide.
we look for the same type of evidence in the Old Testament. We want to know, is there any type of clues that the writers in the Old Testament, specifically in the book of Exodus, that they knew about Egyptian culture? And when you begin to dig down into the text and look at some of the things that are written about, it really shows an indication that these are people who eyewitnessed these things that happened in the Exodus.
Being that there is no actual evidence for the Exodus, and the fact that the story supposedly happened 340 plus years before the invention of the classical Hebrew language, I highly doubt that this is going to be a first-hand account of what happened.
A couple of examples. One example is found in the Egyptian evidence. It's called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and it is a book of spells that talks about what happens in the afterlife. And one of the things that happen in the afterlife, of course, you know that when pharaohs when they die and they are embalmed, they are actually mummified. And one of the things that happens in the mummy is the mummies are buried with a scarab.
All right, so far so good. Nothing too wrong there.
A scarab is a beetle, and the beetle actually has a spell from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. When we read in the Exodus account that when the Pharaoh was confronted by Moses and God through the plagues, it says he hardened his heart.
And that's also forgetting the parts where God actually was the one that hardened his heart, or, that God did it first. But, petty details. Who needs details when you have apologetics? Am I right? Am I right? High five? Yeah.
We know from the Egyptian evidence that the hardening of the heart is not a good thing, because in the afterlife, the Pharaoh's heart would be weighed in the balance, would be weighed in a scale balance, and if the heart was heavy and if it was hard.
This is a metaphor, right? That his heart didn't literally get hardened? That it's metaphor? You know what that is, right? Secondly, since when just because something gets hardened and it gets heavier? Just look at water. You turn it to ice, definitely gets harder, and it actually weighs the exact same. I don't even know where you're going with this, and it's not even right.
It would overweigh the feather of truth.
Actually is the feather of Ma'at, which is the personification of justice and righteousness and law. But, again, details.
And the Pharaoh would be condemned to wander in the afterlife.
Wrong again, bucko. What they actually say is that the evilness of the Pharaoh's heart is what actually would weigh him down. There's nothing in there about hardening of the heart. So you can go look it up and try and find it yourself. Have fun with that. But they said that if his heart was more evil, then it weighed more. And if it weighed more than the feather of Ma'at, then he would be tossed down to be eaten by a beast, Amit. It was the head of a crocodile, and the front legs and body of a lion, and the tail and the back legs of a hippopotamus. I didn't make up the religion, they did. But what pisses me off about this is he can't even get the facts of other religions straight. And if you can't even bother to fact check for other religions, why should I listen to you for anything else?
And so the scarab was meant, when it was buried in the Pharaoh, it was meant to keep his heart soft.
Again, with the softening of the heart, that's not actually what happened or what they actually believed. You're making it up. What they actually did was they had the scarab and they inscribed chapter 30 of the Book of the Dead, and its purpose was that during the weighing of the heart, that the heart wouldn't lie. It was a spell cast to keep the heart from making the owner, the pharaoh, look more evil. Again, why they thought the heart would lie, I don't know. I don't have this religion. But Jesus, dude, fact check. Is it really that hard? Oh no, it's not that hard. You're just full of shit and trying to spin some lame apologetics, hoping that nobody would look it up.
And so the heart would not be condemned. So this is an interesting eyewitness detail that only someone who understood Egyptian culture would have understood. And another indication that the Exodus account is genuine internally in the text.
And I think it's at this point that somebody should remind you that your friend told you he wanted extra biblical support so that you'll quit trying to use the Bible to prove the Bible.
Is the motif or the concept of the snake. And you see the snake all throughout in Genesis, and you see it all through the Exodus.
Is he really forgetting how common of an occurrence that creatures like snakes are in many, 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 many religions? The sun, the moon, the stars, the various animals. There's such a commonality, a common theme with so many religions of that back then. Was it really surprised that some of them run over each other?
And we know from Egyptian culture that the snake was a very, very important symbol. In fact, the snake was a god.
The snake was not the god. The god or goddess was the personification of that snake, or the cows, or the moon, or the stars, or the sun, or whatever. It was not literally a snake.
And then all the plagues of the Exodus, all the 10 plagues, each plague corresponded to an Egyptian god.
You have to admire the tricky wording of corresponds with a god. It makes it sound like for every plague that Moses and Aaron brought upon Pharaoh, that there was a corresponding god to it. You know, for example, the darkness that came about. Well, that corresponds to the god Ra, which is the sun. You know, that's such a really loose connection. But what they make it sound like, as if, let's say, for the plague of blood, there's not a blood god. Now there is a god of the Nile, or goddess, or the two twins of the Nile or something. So it corresponds because Moses and Aaron did the whole blood thing in the Nile River. But there's no blood god. There's no locust or gnat god. There's no fly god. There's no god of plague or famine or disease. There's a god of healing those epidemics, but it's that word corresponding that tries to draw this spooky connection. Wow, it's full of shit.
And the final plague, the plague of the death of the firstborn, corresponded to the divinity of Pharaoh himself.
Nothing. That's it. Just no justification, no explanation, just an assertion. It gives me nothing to work with, so I'm just going to call it an assertion and move on.
So when you begin to add in this Egyptian understanding,
a highly misrepresented and demonstrably false understanding of the Egyptians,
of the Exodus, it's a very strongly Egyptian flavoring. Even the name Moses is an Egyptian name.
You know, when I first heard about this, I didn't realize how much controversy there could be over his name. You know, my first thought is, wait a minute, so there's an Egyptian woman finds his baby, knowing that her brother, I believe, the Pharaoh, was trying to kill basically all the newborns. So let's name this child with a Hebrew name, because, you know, that sounds like a good idea. So, of course, there's the big argument that his name was originally Minius, which then was translated into Hebrew, which then became Mosh or Mosh, and then became Moses. I don't know which one is really the true story, but it doesn't matter because we already know that he didn't actually exist.
So, a lot of internal evidence that the Exodus is definitely a genuine account.
Again, he asked you for extra biblical, and you have yet to offer anything. You know, I shouldn't really be surprised, but I'm still surprised at how much wrong you can put in a 3-minute video. This is the Atheist Chef signing off. Peace.